Hello, 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 and welcome back to Empowered Esquire TV. And today we are continuing our coverage of the R.Kelly trial. Hello to everyone who is here. As you're entering the room, if you can hear me clearly, please put a Y in the chat just so I know that you can hear me and everything is going as it should. Now, there has been a lot of testimony and evidence presented in this case. They have heard from about 18 witnesses thus far. Again, as you're entering the room, if you can hear me, put a Y in the chat. Yeah, okay, awesome. So they've heard from about 18 witnesses thus far. Needless to say, this has been an extensive case, everyone. And there has been a pointed effort to do exactly what the government has alleged that they would do, which is to prove that the man named Robert Sylvester Kelly, known to the world as R.Kelly, was running an alleged criminal enterprise. Now, if you're new to this prosecution and you're wondering, well, what kind of enterprise? Well, the prosecution is alleging that R.Kelly ran a criminal enterprise whose purpose was to transport women, some underage, some of age, for the purpose of having intimate contact with them, and also sometimes for the purpose of demanding and coercing these women into having said intimate contact with friends of R.Kelly or other men that were somehow associated with R.Kelly. So, as this trial has gone on, there have been a lot of bombshells. One of them being that we came to find out that there was a male accuser or a male victim. Now, I have had some interesting comments from a few people who I assume to be R. Kelly supporters who were very upset about me saying that this man was a male victim as opposed to saying that he's a male accuser. Listen, whatever word you prefer to use, we still have to acknowledge that we thought one thing could have been happening, and now it's possible that there could have been a totally different thing happening, right? In regards to young men alleging that they were somehow inappropriately victimized by R. Kelly. So today on the docket, we're going to talk about the Aaliyah accusations, and we are going to talk about the testimony of John Doe, one of the alleged male victims. So let me go ahead and hop into the chat here and say hello to everyone who's here thus far. Hi to 100. Hi to Nappy Yankee. Hi to Rashad Fontenot. I hope I said your name right. Or Fontenot. Beautiful name, either way. Hi to Karen A and hi to Karen J. Oh, cool. We have two Karens in the house. So one more thing I wanted us to have a quick chat about. This is more so of a housekeeping thing, right? But every so often we have to pause and have realistic life combos that may not necessarily pertain to the law per se, right? So I was asked by one of my mods, I won't say who, why, or rather if I want to provide my Cash App when I do these lives, when I do these shows and provide this content. And I've had a lot of back and forth in my own mind as to whether or not I should provide a Cash App. And here's why. I am concerned about any of my viewers feeling any sort of obligation to give or obligation to donate or pressure or anything of that nature. I'm very sensitive to the world that we are living in right now. I'm very sensitive to how difficult it is to function in this new world and that a lot of people are experiencing financial challenges. And so I had so much internal back and forth about it. So what I ended up deciding was I will provide my Cash App. And if you feel that you want to give to the channel and support the content and support us doing bigger and better things, then you are welcome to do so. But I want everyone to understand that you are not obligated to do so and that your presence here is more than enough. Okay? I'm glad we had this chat. Hello to Triple C TV. Alrighty, so my Cash App will be in the chat box at some point. I, of course, didn't provide it to the mods yet, but I wanted to make sure we had this convo before I did. So, first on our list of things to chat about is the R. Kelly and Aaliyah alleged relationship. Now, if you have never had the instance to hear about these allegations and you're wondering, well, what exactly are the allegations? Well, allow me. The allegation is that R. Kelly allegedly married a 15-year-old Aaliyah. Now, needless to say, there are some states in the United States of America where a person can become married before turning 18 years old. That is true. But even these states require parental consent. Okay, so one more time. There are some states in the US in which a minor can get married. But even those states require parental consent. And so the allegation is that Aaliyah did not have parental consent to marry R. Kelly when they allegedly got married. And also that R. Kelly was having inappropriate, intimate contact with Aaliyah at the time of the marriage. It's been rumored that perhaps Aaliyah might have been pregnant, and that sort of is what pushed R. Kelly into trying to make this alleged marriage happen. There's a lot of talk about why they got married. But for legal purposes, it really doesn't matter why, right? It just matters that the allegation is that they did. So let's jump into this article very quickly, which discusses the relationship between R. Kelly and Aaliyah and kind of gives you an overview. And then we will dive into some testimony that was heard at the trial regarding R. Kelly's relationship with Aaliyah and the marriage and how it was that a 15-year-old Aaliyah was able to marry a grown man, really, at that time, right? Okay, alrighty. So I see Nappy Yankee reminding everyone to hit the like button. Please do, as you come on in, hit the like button. If you are not subscribed, why not? Subscribe and hit the notification bell so that you get notifications when I am live. All right, so here we go. We are going to hop into the article that I have queued up for you guys to give you the gist of the Aaliyah accusations and where R. Kelly stands on these accusations. Okay. All right. So here we are. R. Kelly finally admits to underage blank contact with Aaliyah. So this is not, people accusing R. Kelly per se, right? Now we're hearing that supposedly he's admitted to this. Okay. Here we go. We're going to go further into the article. Now, R. Kelly has finally admitted to having underage blank contact with the late R&B singer Aaliyah. Kelly's confession comes nearly 3 decades after the pair were alleged to have been married in an illegal ceremony when Kelly was 27 and Aaliyah was 15. Okay, one moment. Let's get past that. Kelly served as an executive producer on Aaliyah's 1994 debut album and had previously denied rumors that he and his then protege had a blank relationship. Kelly is currently standing trial on allegations that he led an enterprise of managers, bodyguards, and other employees who helped him recruit women and girls for blank. He has pleaded not guilty to racketeering, bribery, coercion, enticement, and blank trafficking. Okay. In a statement to The Independent, Thomas A. Farinella, one of the lawyers defending Kelly, stated that the defense does concede that Mr. Kelly had underage blank contact with Jane Doe number 1. Pause. So, R. Kelly and his defense team have supposedly pretty much conceded, which means they admit that R. Kelly had intimate contact with Jane Doe number 1 when she was underage. We have to pause on that and have a moment because there has been so much back and forth about these allegations. And there have been a lot of people saying that R. Kelly has always denied all of this. He has never admitted to any of it, et cetera, et cetera. And now we see that that may not necessarily be the entire truth, right? Interesting. And it is alleged that Jane Doe number one is Aaliyah, by the way. Okay, we are going to hop back into our article and continue. Kelly's lawyers had previously attempted to dismiss claims by prosecutors that involved Jane Doe number one due to her unfortunate passing on the 25th of August, 2001, citing that she is legally unavailable. Aaliyah was killed in a plane crash on August 25th, 2001 at the age of 22. So, teaching moment. This language about Aaliyah being legally unavailable, it is legally relevant language. So the long and short of it is that R. Kelly's attorneys are arguing that being that Aaliyah herself is not available to testify, then the prosecution should not be permitted to discuss allegations involving Aaliyah because it's not possible for Aaliyah to testify. Now, why does that argument make some sort of legal sense? Well, here's why. In the United States of America, criminal defendants have the right to confront the witnesses and evidence against them. So anyone who is facing criminal prosecution, they have the constitutional right to be able to cross-examine that witness, to be able to challenge those documents, to be able to say, well, where did these documents come from, right? You get what I'm saying? So within that right, Kelly's lawyers tried to argue, we shouldn't be able to talk about anything to do with Aaliyah because Aaliyah is not here to be cross-examined. Well, obviously that argument did not work, but it was a legally logical argument, okay? The article goes on to explain, in 1994, when she was 15, Aaliyah said in an interview that she was rather close to Kelly, but denied that the pair had been married. Despite her and Kelly's denials, a 2000 report in the Chicago Sun-Times uncovered evidence that Aaliyah had filed suit in 1997 to have all records of their marriage expunged. The singer told the court that she was not old enough to marry without the consent of her parents. The report further claimed that Kelly and Aaliyah had married on the 31st of August, 1994, with Aaliyah declaring herself 18 years old on the pair's marriage certificate. Aaliyah and her parents had the marriage annulled shortly after the ceremony. So I am hopping back into the chat because we are now going to have a convo about annulments and expungements of marriages and how it is that Aaliyah was able to first get this marriage annulled and then second, have it expunged. Okay. All righty. So Queen Quiche has a question. She says, was this today that he confessed? No, that article is dated August 4th. So apparently that was a while ago that they issued this admission, which it's surprising that we didn't hear too much about it. But hey, you never know. Maybe it kind of flew under the radar. Okay. Eric Summers says, what type of legal strategy is that if they aren't pleading guilty? Well, good point. You know, but at some point as an attorney, you have to have some level of integrity, Mr. Summers. And so it may be that his attorney said there's no way that we can deny this. They may have realized that if they plan on continuing to be an attorney, it's going to be a bold-faced lie to try to deny that, right? Possibly, allegedly. Eric Summers also says, but why would he admit to illegal contact with her if he isn't pleading guilty? Well, there are many, many different reasons why he may have conceded. As I said earlier, his attorneys may have realized as part of their strategy that the evidence in regards to that allegation is just far too strong for him to try to deny it outright. And maybe they have in their back pocket some defense that they're going to use to explain how things occurred. That's probably what's going to happen. Okay. So very quickly, let us have a conversation about annulment. So for those of you who are kind of unfamiliar with annulment, there is a difference between an annulment and a divorce. So a divorce is when two persons are married, right? And then those two persons, for some reason, decide to no longer be married. and they then divorce, i.e., they legally dissolve the marriage, but they were still at one point married. That's how divorce is viewed. Annulment is totally different. Annulment is as if that marriage never occurred. So it's not as though you had a marriage and then you dissolved it. It is this marriage never happened. That is an annulment. Now, there are several different ways that someone could seek an annulment, but one of the ways that you could seek an annulment, which may apply here, is fraud. So we know that allegedly Aaliyah was 15 years old, right? And she misled the marriage officials to believe that she was 18. Why she did that? Again, there's contention about that. But we know that she quoted herself as being 18 when she was actually 15. That, for the purposes of a marriage, is fraud. So more than likely, the annulment was granted because fraudulent instances occurred. Aaliyah was not truthful about her age, and thereby she did not have the requisite consent to get married. So it's not as though she was married to R.Kelly and they got divorced, right? It is legally as though they never even married at all because her age was not within the required criteria to be able to marry someone. And because she led the marriage officials to believe that she was old enough to be able to marry someone when she wasn't. So that is how we get to Aaliyah and R.Kelly allegedly marrying each other, and then Aaliyah having the marriage annulled. Okay. Hello, D. Jones. I see you just got in. D. Jones says, can I get a quick overview? D. Jones, go back to the beginning of the stream. I give a whole overview of the case and where we are in the very beginning. All right. Hello to Information Man. Oh, wrong comment. Hello to Information Man. Peace and respect to you as well, sir. You are doing great work. If you haven't checked out Information Man, you should check him out. He is awesome. All righty. Jason Stevens, why do you think there wasn't any charges for this illegal marriage? There were, Jason. Aaliyah is Jane Doe number one. So yes, charges were levied. Okay. All right. Oh, back in 1994. Okay, that makes sense. So again, you have to remember that when all of these things occurred, 1994 is a totally different legal landscape than 2021. Back in 1994, a lot of people could still obtain fake documentation, fake IDs, fake birth certificates, all these things. And no one was any the wiser. People could get away with these fake credentials for years on end, right? So it's not the age of information that we're living in now. So a lot of things that happened back then weren't prosecuted back then because no one caught on to it, right? So we are going to dive into some court transcripts. But before we do that, as promised, I'm going to put my little Cash App tag in the comments. If you missed our little powwow on the Cash Apps, let me do it one more time for you. You are never obligated to give. You being here is enough. But because I've been asked by many different people, I have decided to share the Cash App so that for those who do want to give, you can, right? Okay, so let's dive into the testimony. If you guys are hearing the ridiculous noise in the background, I have to apologize. The man who lives across the street from me has this horrible car with a ridiculous alarm that goes off every 2 seconds. Okay. Share screen. Let's see. All right, here we are. Okay, so you are now viewing the actual court transcript from the day that there was testimony involving Jane Doe number one, also known as Aaliyah. We're going to take it to the beginning. As you can see by the very creative watermark here, Diva Divine Light so graciously provided me with these transcripts. She's been amazing about sharing transcripts with me when she gets them, and I really appreciate her for it. So thank you, Diva. All right, so here we go. U.S. District Court, Eastern District of New York, August 25th, 2021. Now, Aaliyah is what's relevant to us, right? So we do this. And now we see where a conversation began regarding Aaliyah. So let's see. Let's back it up and see when we'd like to begin. I think we may want to start right about here. Yeah, let's start here. Okay. So here we are. The court says, all right, next question. Line 19. Are you familiar with? Well, you testified that you're familiar with an individual named Barry Hankerson? Yes. And what, if any, connection did Barry Hankerson have to Aaliyah? I believe they were blood relatives. Then there's an objection. Do you know if they were? Sometimes people say, I believe, and they actually know. The witness says, I don't know. Question, you previously testified that you had a mortgage business, correct? Yes. Can you just explain generally to the jurors what that entails, just very generally? And now the witness goes on to testify about his occupation, which, of course, is not relevant for our purposes, right? Now we move on to the relevant portion. So we are here at line 1. If you could explain to the jurors what happened when the defendant visited you there. He indicated, I believe, that he was going to get married. When you say he indicated, what do you mean? Robert, the defendant? Yes. So just to be clear, the defendant visited you at your office. Yes. And he indicated to you that he wanted to be married, correct? Yes. At the time, did you know who he wanted to marry? Answer, Aaliyah. Now, who, if anyone else, was with the defendant when he came to your office to say he wanted to get married to Aaliyah? There were a number of people. Pause. Understand what the government is doing here, people. They are establishing that there were a number of people around R.Kelly who allegedly knew that R.Kelly was planning to marry a minor. Wow. That is how they are establishing a criminal enterprise. So not just R.Kelly marrying someone underage, allegedly, right? But R.Kelly having an entire team of people who were aware of what he was doing and in league with what he was doing. All right, I'm going to hop in the chat and say hello to a few people who have come in. Hello to Take R.Kelly. Hello to Sid Bo. Hello to, I missed someone. Oh, I missed someone, but I can't catch up at this point. Hello to Queen Keisha. I know I'm missing someone else, but I'm a little behind. Alrighty, so we're going to hop back into the transcript. If you have any questions about what we've discussed thus far, you're free to drop it in the chat. Once we finish reviewing the testimony, we're going to discuss what we reviewed. Alrighty? Okay, so I am headed back into the transcript. Do you recall, we're here on line 22. Do you recall any of the names of the people who were there? In my office? Not necessarily. Correct, in your office. I think it was June and Demetrius. Uh-huh. Yet another teaching moment, everyone. The government has already put Demetrius Smith on the stand. So they are even further substantiating what? The criminal enterprise. Because you have Demetrius Smith testifying that he was being told to do things at R.Kelly's behest that were illegal. And now you have Demetrius present when R.Kelly is telling this third party that he wants to marry a minor. Okay. Let's get back into it. So here we are, 1345, line 4. And you also mentioned June was there, correct? It could have been some others. I just don't. Okay. Do you recall what, if any, relationship June had to the defendant? I think he was like an assistant. What did you say? What did the defendant say to you after he told you he wanted to get married to Aaliyah? He asked if I was a minister. And what did you say? Yes. You said yes, you knew a minister? Yes. And did you provide him with any names of ministers? Yes. Whose name did you provide? Nathan Edmond. And how did you know Nathan Edmond? He was also involved in real estate, and he was a tax buyer of some sort, and he was involved in real estate in general. Was he a minister? Yes. So now we're seeing how R.Kelly went about lining up the people who assisted him in getting married to Aaliyah. Notice that he didn't take Aaliyah's fake ID and just march down to the courthouse and try to marry her, right? Right? And all of these things, all these steps being taken, all these actions being taken only further substantiates what the government is trying to prove, which is that there was an entire network of people who knew that something that was not above board, right? Something not legal was happening. Because if this was a legal marriage, like I said, you go down to the courthouse, you fill out whatever, you get married. Okay, back into the testimony. We're now on page 1346. And how did you know that? I knew him from real estate and we were friends. I'm showing the witness what has just been marked as Government Exhibit 89. Do you see that there, sir? Yes. Generally speaking, what is Government Exhibit 89? A picture of Nathan Edmond. And is that a fair and accurate representation of Nathan Edmond? Yes. So another teaching moment, everyone. Fair and accurate representation. Let me use one of our little cool tools here and highlight it. So there is a reason that you have the prosecutor saying, is it a fair and accurate representation? Whenever any party, whether it's the government or it's the defense, seeks to enter something into evidence, it has to be authenticated. And there's different ways to authenticate something, right? But to authenticate something just means to prove that it's valid, to prove that it's correct, to prove that it's not made up, right? So whenever you're showing someone a picture that's supposed to represent something, you ask them, is this a fair and accurate representation? And that is how you establish for the court, Your Honor, this is a true representation of what I'm trying to portray. I've authenticated it. And now I'd like to enter it as evidence. And when you're talking about physical evidence, so let's say, for example, they were entering the infamous iPad in this case, right? They would then ask the witness, have you seen this object before? And is it in the same or substantially the same condition as the last time you saw it? Authenticated, then you can enter it as evidence. So that's the process that you see happening here, okay? All right, they then offer it up as evidence, right? No objection. So you see here at line 12, the government offers Government's Exhibit 89. The court asks, any objection? And Mr. Koenig says, no. The court then says, all right, that's an evidence and you can publish it. So now that it's in evidence, Ms. Cruz Melendez can show it to the jury. All right, so now you're a pro on how to enter evidence. I'm hopping back in the chat again. Hello to Miss Diva Divine Light. You missed your shout out. I was telling you, thank you for being so gracious in sharing the transcripts and everything that you're getting in this case. It has been instrumental and I'm so appreciative of it. So hello to Diva and thank you for everything that you've done. I think I already said hello to Nappy Yankee, but I'll do it again. Hello to Nappy Yankee. Thanks for being amazing. He is another content creator that you all should definitely check out. Okay. And I am going to go ahead and post my little comment once more, just so everyone in the chat has it. Let me take that down. Alrighty, so let's hop back into the transcript. Okay, so it's entered as evidence. Now, here on line 19. So you mentioned that this meeting with the defendant happened at your office. Do you recall where your office was located? Answer. 9730 Southwestern in Evergreen Park, Illinois. Is that near Chicago? Yes. How close is it to Chicago? One side of the west side of Western is Evergreen Park. Interesting. This is an interesting answer. And the east side of Western is Chicago. So is it like a suburb of Chicago? Yes. So you testified that you recommended Nathan Edmond to the defendant. Yes. Who, if anyone, reached out to Nathan Edmond once you recommended him to the defendant? I'm not sure. But I may have called him. I just don't remember. When you say you may have called him, what do you mean you may have called Nathan Edmond? Yes. Did Nathan Edmond ultimately agree to officiate the wedding? Yes. Did the defendant say when he intended to marry Aaliyah? Not specifically. Did you get an impression as to the time frame as to when it was to happen? My assumption was that it was going to be soon. So, Mr. Williams, I want to turn your attention for a moment. Have you ever been convicted of a crime? Answer, yes. And what crime were you convicted of? Now let's have another moment. Let's pause. Some of you are going to say, why is he being questioned about his past? Again, remember one of our favorite sayings here on this channel, right? Witness credibility is always relevant. So when they start asking him about his past convictions, it's to kind of get the jury to kind of clue in to whether or not he is a credible person. And they should use whether or not he's a credible person when they're weighing his testimony and deciding whether or not he's someone that, they want to believe, really. All righty. So where are we? 1348. Okay, we're going to skip forward to 1350 so we can get back into the Aaliyah testimony. So we're here on page 1350, line 17. Mr. Canick, that is defense counsel. Yes, by the government, there was inquiry as to knowledge about the wedding that Robert planned for himself and Aaliyah. The court, right. And in the statement, oh, that can't come in. That's hearsay. No, this is from Robert to him. The court states, Kelly called Williams crying sometimes, and Kelly stated that he married her to protect her from her mother. That is rank hearsay. Sorry. So, what we're having here is a back and forth conversation about hearsay. Mr. Canick continues. He says, I'm not offering it for the truth of the matter, Your Honor. The court says, yes, you are. Canick, no, I'm not. What are you offering it for? That this is what he said. That's hearsay. My exception. The court then says, nice try. I giggle because, I would assume, mind you, I really haven't done much research on Mr. Canick, but I would assume that Mr. Canick has been practicing for a while. And this statement right here is not a hearsay exception, people. If you're offering hearsay and a judge says to you, what are you offering it for? Your answer should be a hearsay exception. Not that this is what my client said. That's the epitome of hearsay. You're offering a statement that was made outside of court for the truth of the matter. So after Canick made this initial argument that it wasn't for the truth of the matter, what he was supposed to say after that is, Your Honor, I'm offering it to show the state of mind of my client, to show that my client thought that he was rescuing Aaliyah from a bad situation, Your Honor. Boom. I can almost guarantee you that that argument would have gotten it in. But here it was deemed inadmissible because he offers hearsay, says it's not for the truth of the matter, and then says that it is for the truth of the matter. I mean, how long has he been? Anyway, I'm in the chat again. Diva says, Auntie Anne is funny. Yeah, this judge is something else, but she's accurate. You cannot offer hearsay for the truth of the matter. You are supposed to give an argument that explains to the court why the hearsay should be allowed in. And it's not for the truth of the matter. You're either arguing that it's not hearsay or you're arguing an exception. That's it. That's what you have to do. Take R.Kelly says, Auntie Anne says he's a good attorney and she's enjoyed working with him, but his behavior says anything other than a good attorney. Well, as I said, I am surprised to see this exchange. Honestly, this is not at all what I would have expected. Mara Charisse is in the building. Hello, Mara. Mara says, I miss so much. This is good. Thank you for doing this. Thank you for being here, Mara. And yes, hello to everyone who has just joined us. Okay. I see Eric Summers asking a question, Eric Summers, about hearsay. I kind of covered that, but in case you missed it, Eric, hearsay is not admissible. In general, you cannot argue hearsay in court, which is why Mr. Koenig should have either argued that it is not hearsay, which that's an argument that he would have had to develop and explain, or he needed a hearsay exception. Okay, but this exchange that we just read is not it at all. I mean, at all. I'm totally blown away that he even attempted to make that it, because that's just not it. Okay. Now, something else I wanted to note about defense counsel and the defense. I've noticed that in their cross-examinations of the Jane Does, defense counsels have been bringing up podcast interviews, television appearances, other things that the Jane Does have appeared in which they've discussed R.Kelly. And they've been cross-examining them about these interviews, about these television shows, and also about their social media activity and about their YouTube activity. And I bring that up to say, we have been having this conversation about the potential for these types of activities, so online activity, to be damaging in a criminal case. And this just goes to show, yes, when someone is online, showing themselves in a certain light, it can be damaging to them in a criminal case. And very often you do have to account for your online activity if you are either a defendant in a criminal case or a witness in a criminal case. Now, there's another thing that came up that I wanted us to have a quick conversation about, and I wanted to ask you all your opinion. I love to have my little what say you combo with you. So here's my next question for you. Let me take the transcript down for just a moment so we can just have a little, heart to heart. Here's my question, everyone. There was a Jane Doe who testified. I believe it was Jane Doe number 6. This Jane Doe testified that she was allegedly given herpes by R.Kelly, that R.Kelly knew that he had herpes, did not disclose to her that he had herpes, and then proceeded to transmit herpes to her via, of course, intimate contact with her. Now, on the stand, she is questioned about some of her online activities. Apparently, she has done a few podcast interviews in which she has said, and I quote, "I don't feel like a victim. I don't like the word victim. I don't consider myself to be a victim." She also says that she does not consider herself to be a survivor because she does not consider herself to be a victim. Now, needless to say, the defense attorneys went ham with that, right? I mean, and you would expect them to do so. And they began to say that, well, if these things that happened to you were so horrendous, why do you not view yourself as a victim? And so my initial instinct is, I can understand if someone is saying they are not a victim because they did not have coerced intimate contact. They wanted to have intimate contact. But it's difficult for me to understand a woman saying that she was given herpes by someone who knowingly gave her herpes, allegedly, that she was crushed to find out that she had been deceived like this, and then to turn around and hear her say that she doesn't think she survived anything and that she doesn't view herself as a victim. So personally, I think that hurt her credibility. And when I'm hearing it, it throws me off. So my question is, what say you, people in the chat? Are you thrown off by Jane Doe number 6 saying that she's not a victim and that she hasn't survived anything? Is that odd to you? I'll give you guys a moment to drop your answers in the chat. I'll have a sip of my water. So I see a comment here from Sidbo. Sidbo says, she was saying that to block out her bad experiences. Some people do that. That is an interesting take. So it's possible that she's trying to take back her power, right? She's saying, I'm not a victim because I am in control of my life. I am taking back the power of this negative experience. Okay. I can see that. I can see that. Rockin' with the Truth says, I think she is still going through something because, in my opinion, she is a victim. Right. In my opinion, that is the epitome of victimization, right? Someone knows that they have this disease, they don't disclose it, they give it to you. So it's odd to me to hear her say that. Miss me, Miss Mo. Ooh, that's a tongue twister. Miss me, Miss Mo. I thought Jane number 6 was speaking to the helpless connotation to the word victim. She wasn't saying she wasn't wronged. Aha! Miss me, Miss Mo, I think you got it. I think you hit the nail on the head. I think what Jane Doe number 6 might be going for is that she doesn't want to be viewed as helpless. And that's why she's shying away from victim. All right, so Take R.Kelly says is what she said is she made her decisions and choices. When the defense tried to call her on it, the prosecution came back and said the defendant also made choices. Correct. That did happen. They did have that back and forth. But when I provide my insight, it's as someone who can kind of get into the mind of juries. And I think that could throw a juror off. All right. Eric Summers says, I would have to hear her full story to put her statements into context, or she could be in the largest river in Egypt. She could be in denial. Maybe, sometimes when you deal with something that is very traumatic, you do end up just going into a mode of denial in an attempt to make yourself feel better, So perhaps that is what happened. Okay. All right. I don't see any other comments. Anyone else want to vote on whether or not Jane Doe number 6's statements could potentially be viewed as disingenuous? Anyone have any thoughts on that? If not, we are going to move into the male accuser / victim, John Doe number 1. Miss Me, Miss Mo says she's previously said she still has power over her situation. Okay. Lisa West says predators pick on weak-minded people too. Good. Yeah, good point. Good point. Okay, so I don't see any more comments on Jane Doe number 6. So we are going to head on into discussing the testimony from this male accuser, victim, whatever terminology you like, right? But this was one of the major bombshells here. So we're going to get the gist of what this young man testified to. And then we're going to discuss it, right? We're going to have a conversation again about criminal enterprises, about recruitment, and about some of the things that we've heard thus far that really draw a parallel between R.Kelly and Jeffrey Epstein. Okay, so let's get into that. Going to my Chrome tab. All right, so shout out to The Plain is Jane. We are here on her channel. We're starting at about 19:55, so 19 minutes and 55 seconds in, because that's really when she starts getting into John Doe. Okay, so we're probably going to watch this for about 10 minutes or so, just so that she can give us the gist of the testimony. Volume is up, right? Okay. They're going by Lois. That is his alias in court, Lois. But this is John Doe number one. Okay. And we can tell that the sketches, he's got hair. There's only two John Does. One has locks, one doesn't. This is the 16th witness to take the stand. Also, the first male victim to accuse R. Kelly of sexual abuse in this trial. Okay. So he was very soft-spoken on the stand, according to the reporters. He met R. Kelly in 2016. Catch this. He met R. Kelly in 2016 when he was just 17 years old, working where? At the McDonald's drive-thru. Why is this man addicted to McDonald's and kids? Which one comes first? Do you go there because it's kids, or do you go there for the fries or the nuggets or the quarter pounder? Robert, what is going on? Oh my God, I'm just disgusted. Is it the play place? All right. Nonetheless, this guy is he was an aspiring rapper at that time. So he claims while he was working the drive-thru, he's 17 years old, he's a senior in high school. Robert comes through the drive-thru and slips his phone number to him on a piece of paper. He goes home, he tells his mom, hey, R. Kelly gave me his phone number, blah, blah, blah. His mom turns around and calls R. Kelly in 2006, hoping that Robert could somehow help her son become a rapper. So, he's claiming that, R. Kelly lured me to his home with false hopes about helping me out with my music career. And R. Kelly then invited them both, him and his mom, to his mansion. Okay. They go. John Doe even gets a photo with R. Kelly. He gets a picture. R. Kelly whispers to him at one point or another while he's there with his mom. He whispers, next time, come alone. You'll hear a lot of common themes within these stories. We'll get into a little bit more in a second. So Lois, John Doe number one, started going to the mansion to record music and get feedback. We all know that in one of R. Kelly's mansions, he actually had a studio there in the home, which he called the Chocolate Factory. So he started getting some feedback, but R. Kelly initially told him that he had some potential before later on saying that he didn't like the song that Lewis was working on with one of his song engineers in the studio. So John Doe testified that over the course of his 15-year friendship, relationship, whatever you want to call it, they were intimate with R. Kelly, that R. Kelly gave him oral sex, made him have sex with other women, and routinely recorded their sexual encounters on his iPad. Another reoccurring theme, everybody, well, for the most part, a couple of folks have stated that he used an old school VidCam camcorder, right? But as far as what R.Kelly and a couple of other accounts were, he loved recording on that iPad, never his phone or anything else. It was that iPad. Maybe they have that in evidence. I don't know. But nonetheless, this John Doe goes on later on and essentially says that R. Kelly kind of was holding that over his head as blackmail, those recordings. So he says that, and this is the part where we get really graphic, y'all. You talking about smoking cigars. Okay. One of the first times he went over to the mansion, he says, we sat down and talked for a while, and he asked me what I was willing to do for the music. He recalled telling R. Kelly, well, I'll carry your bags. Anything you need, I'll be willing to do that. R. Kelly said, nah, that's not it. That's not it. You ever had a fantasy about you having sex with a man? John Doe said he said no. He said he went on to say he liked having sex with women, and R. Kelly was more so hell-bent on you having fantasies with men. Lois went on to say, R. Kelly crawled down on his knees to me and proceeded to give me oral sex, even though I wasn't into it.
Okay, I don't know about you all, but I need to take a moment there. So, based upon what we are hearing, we are pretty much being presented with a witness, an alleged victim, who says that he met R. Kelly when he was 17 years old, that he was led to believe that R. Kelly would assist him with his music career,
And instead, he was met with what he alleges is R. Kelly coming on to him and asking him strange questions about intimate conduct, knowing that this is a, teenager of 17 years of age. So here's the thing about John Doe and his testimony, and a lot of the things moving around in the background that we don't often discuss. It is possible, considering how many Jane Does there are, right? It is possible that there may be other John Does. However, male victims of these type of assaults, this type of crime, if you will, are not as likely to come forward as female victims. Female victims receive a lot of ridicule for coming forward, but it's times 300 for male victims. And then we have the fact that we live in a society that is so machismo, and that men are taught that if something happened to them in which they were a quote unquote victim, it's because they're not man enough, right? Let's be real for a second. So we have to consider the possibility that there may be other John Does out there who just do not come forward in this instance and in many others out of the fear of their manhood being challenged or being bullied or something of that nature, right? So let me hop in the chat because I see a lot of really interesting questions here and I want to make sure I catch them. All right, Teddy Woodson. Teddy Woodson says, when an alleged victim returns after an alleged incident, does the alleged victim bear any responsibility? So interesting question. Before I answer that question, I want to say you are getting my live reaction to this testimony. As you're watching it, I'm watching it and I'm going, whoa, you're getting my live reaction. So I'm right there with you when you're hearing a lot of these really just outlandish things, right? And by outlandish, I mean difficult to hear. Okay. All right. So, Teddy, to answer your question, under the law, if there is an adult having interactions with a minor, the adult is responsible. The minor never bears any type of responsibility. And now, if you put that into a hypothetical situation, right? Let's say that individual A is an adult who has a basketball court at his home. And so individual A understands that many teenagers in the area come to his home to use the basketball court. Well, let's say hypothetically one day individual A inappropriately touches one of these teenagers. And that same teenager returns a few days later to play basketball again. That teenager does not bear any responsibility for the fact that he returned. He should be able to return to play basketball every single day, as long as he's invited, right? Without facing the possibility of an adult touching him inappropriately when he is a minor. Minors do not bear any legal responsibility. I'm sure you guys are probably hearing my neighbor's lovely car alarm going off again. All righty, so I am in the chat. Okay, Trina Sincere, another interesting comment. She says, this John Doe is facing 15 years for trying to silence another witness. So he's snitching now to get jail time. Oh, to get less jail time. So I did hear that this John Doe is facing time for intimidating another witness. I did hear that. And the fact that he has been given a plea deal is something that the jury will be aware of and that they will be kind of instructed to consider when they are weighing his credibility. Because again, witness credibility is always relevant. So when the jury is considering whether or not John Doe number one is a credible witness, they will consider the fact that he is testifying as part of a plea deal. And that's with anyone who testifies as part of a plea deal. Someone else made a comment about the John Does. Here we go. Take R.Kelly says, most of them aren't charged victims. They are witnesses to establish patterns and RICO. Right. So my comment about John Does was not whether or not they are charged victims. My comment was that based upon the testimony we're hearing from John Doe number one, it's possible there are other John Doe victims who haven't come forward. And we're going to hear more about that testimony, which makes it even more possible. Keep the Truth says, I said this 2 years ago on my Twitter that all the enablers were going to testify against R.Kelly. Some of those witnesses was on these YouTube blogs trying to discredit the victims. Right. So what happens is similar to what many of you have already, opined, right? That people who could somehow be implicated, they decide to cooperate because they realize the option is I end up being prosecuted or I cooperate. So, yes. Okay, I see a lot of good conversations going on in here. I want to bring this up. Rocking with the Truth says, enticing our young children with promises and lies. RK was the responsible, accountable adult that should have learned right from wrong a long time ago. No pity from me, sorry. So, this comment, everyone, is something that whether we're discussing R. Kelly or not, we need to get through our heads. Adults are accountable for their behavior. Children, notice how I had to stretch out the word because it's like for some reason we're not getting it. Children are not responsible for the behavior of adults. Children can act irresponsibly. They shouldn't, right? We hope they won't, but they can. And they're not as legally responsible for their conduct as an adult is. Okay. Alrighty, so we are going to hop back into the video now. Put the video back up.
Robert.
Oh my God.
He said he told R. Kelly that he didn't really like it, and then R. Kelly stopped. So this is the part that got some emotion. There's almost 700 of us here. Make sure y'all hit that daggone thumbs up button. This is the part that got Rob a little agitated, right? Otherwise, we've been reporting on this every day. There's really only been one other day where Rob showed emotion, and that was when Rkelly was in that courtroom. It was the most emotion he'd ever shown. But this time, right? He wasn't stoic. He was agitated while John Doe was giving this testimony. He was agitated. He was shaking his head, and he was folding his hands and just fidgety. And so afterwards, John Doe is stating that he told me to keep the encounter between him and me, and said we're family now. Robert, y'all are what? Y'all know I gotta get it out my system. I'm gonna go to the bush and weep because this is just too much.
It was gone.
Let me just go in the bush and weep. Let me just go in the bush and weep. I just have to go in the bush and weep. Really. I don't understand.
We have to have a moment. I think anyone hearing this testimony recap, you have to be headed to the bush to weep right now. I mean, you have to be. You have to be. This is devastating testimony. Whether you are on one side of the fence or not, whether you believe it or not, this testimony is devastating. Oh boy. All right, here we go.
I swear to God, I don't understand.
He goes on, he testified and said R. Kelly never physically abused me, but he did try to give me oral sex when I was 17. So they're making it clear that the legal age of consent in Illinois is 17, but because R. Kelly was almost 40 at the time, it does constitute as sexual abuse. So keep that in mind, right? There were a couple times that Lois performed for R. Kelly, a few times in the studio. But he stated in court that he mostly played basketball with R. Kelly and attended his house parties. Over the course of his 15-year relationship, he said that him and R. Kelly had many sexual encounters, most of which were recorded. And also, majority of the time, R. Kelly was coercing him to have sex with women. Most of the time, they were the women that R. Kelly was dating. They were R. Kelly's girlfriends. So he wanted John Doe number one, to have sex with his girlfriends on demand when he wanted. He liked that. So R.Kelly often recorded these interactions, even though it made Lois uncomfortable. Okay. And eventually R.Kelly then told him, you need to start following Rob's rules too. You need to call me daddy. These stories get stranger and stranger. Stranger and stranger. So Lois went on to describe a very deranged and abnormal instance in the garage where R.Kelly snapped his fingers 3 times to summons a naked girl from under a boxing ring to command that she crawl over on her knees and give R.Kelly oral sex, then to give John Doe number one oral sex.
So listen to the allegation we're hearing. We're hearing, I mean, beyond how crazy it sounds, we're hearing that a woman was under a boxing ring. She was made to come out from under the ring on her knees and perform intimate actions on both R.Kelly and this other man, right? Allegedly. Now, here is the thing. Based upon what we're hearing about how this woman was treated, right? We can already say, do we know if she was doing this consensually? I mean, do we know if she was coerced in some way to behave like this, to be on the ground, crawling around? Do we know how long she was kept under that boxing ring and not permitted to leave until, whenever R.Kelly allegedly decided that he wanted her to come crawling out? That's all of those things are floating in the background. And then you add that allegedly she was also made to interact with this other man. And you have yet another tip of the hat to what? The criminal enterprise, the Mann Act, right? The transporting women around to coerce them, to force them, to pressure them to allegedly engage in intimate actions with other men. Got it? Okay, let's get back into this. We're going to watch a few more minutes so we get the gist of his testimony.
This was a detached garage with his mansion in Chicago that he had a boxing ring in. And it's just naked women under there. Naked women. Okay. So did y'all get that? Because it still takes me aback. And I typed this up and I reread it 5 times and it still takes me aback because how long was she under there? Naked, potentially afraid, potentially cold. So we go on. Same story. Woman comes out from under the boxing ring. This is what John Doe is saying in court. He says, and I quote, he was telling her to say that she liked me. He wanted her to say my name. I didn't mind it. It was a weird situation. I wouldn't mind it if it was just me and her. Yeah. So Lois continued playing basketball with R.Kelly and having sex with him as he finished high school in 2007. Again, he was a senior when he met R.Kelly. He also introduced R.Kelly to more of his young friends. This is the part where I kind of want to, before we get into this family thing, I think that Robert has a really...
So before the plaintiff Jane goes in, let's have another teaching moment, another learning moment, shall we? This young man who is alleging that he was a victim is also saying that he introduced R.Kelly, that he allegedly introduced R.Kelly to some of his friends who we can assume were also minors. So once more, when you have a network of people in which that network is introducing R.Kelly to minors, and R.Kelly then has inappropriate, illegal contact with these minors, you have what, everyone in the chat? I'll tell you, a criminal enterprise.
Let's continue.
Sick obsession with the thought of incest, right? Because John Doe says in court, as our relationship got stronger, he called me brother. I was his little brother. We get into this thing where there's another person that's referred to as nephew, and John Doe refers to nephew too. Azriel brought up nephew and said that Robert forced her to have sex with nephew when she brought a pair of Hollister sweatpants that were the wrong size. She brought them too small. She needed to be buying baggy stuff. And so for you to be naming these people that you having sex with, nephew and brother, what is this desire to do it to people? What do you really crave to do it to your family? Or is this some sort of mind fuck, right? To mentally jerk around or encourage these victims to be loyal or to not tell on you or to embrace a family dynamic? Y'all keep it sticky real. Let me know what y'all think down below in the comments. What I won't do is neglect to tell the part of the story where Robert was a victim of molestation himself from his older sister, Teresa, and another man that lived up the street around the corner. He could very well be trying to duplicate his own childhood because he was unfortunately taken advantage of. But it's still very disturbing that he's a grown man. He knows right from wrong. Clearly, the fact that you're trying to hide these things and blackmail these people, you know this is wrong. Go.
And so, everyone, we have now heard the gist of the testimony from John Doe number 1. Now, the plaintiff Jane made a point that I do want to speak to. She discussed that it's alleged that R.Kelly was a victim of abuse when he was a minor. And yes, that is possible. It's been psychologically proven that there are many times when victims, who go through things when they are a minor, grow into adults who then become predators. That does sometimes happen. And while I think we can universally acknowledge that it is horrible that these things happen, I think we also should universally acknowledge that once you become an adult, you have to take responsibility for your behavior. I hope that someone somewhere hears this. And I want to say this. If you are an adult who has been through traumatic things as a child, it is now your responsibility to seek help, to seek a therapist, to seek a counselor, to seek a psychologist, right? Something of that nature to help you address that trauma. If you continue to act out in adulthood and try to blame the trauma that happened to you as a child, number one, you may end up being prosecuted, right? And number two, you're going to damage your future. All right, so we have a question in the chat. Quack13 says, don't you have to cross state lines for the Mann Act to apply? Quack13, I'm assuming you're new to this case, so you may want to go back to the beginning of the stream, but the government has already had several witnesses testify who talk about the transportation and who speak about observing the transportation of girls for illicit activity and the girls being transported all over the country, allegedly. Okay, and Fab 540 says, hurt people hurt people. Yes. Yes, if you've been through some trauma as a child, now is the time for you to, address it and not move forward with that baggage and possibly perpetuate negative behaviors. Miss Mo, it is insane that people are trying to blame the teenagers. They didn't even have fully developed frontal cortexes. Oh, thank goodness. Finally, someone says it. To make sound decisions. RK was responsible biologically, legally, and morally. I will say what I have always said. Adults are responsible. Minors are not. And the fact that there seems to be a league of people going out of their way to explain why minors are responsible. And this isn't just with R.Kelly, people. This is with R.Kelly. This is with Michael Nowak, aka Brother Polite. This is with Dr. York, right? This is with tons of people in which
You have adults going out of their way to explain why minors are responsible. It is a looking glass into the sickness we are dealing with, everyone. Because what is going on with us? What is going on with our brain, our psychology as a people? And by as a people, you know what I always say, I mean humans, right? As a society, that we don't view it as adults are the responsible party, that instead we make excuses. Glass that shows a terrible picture. Terrible picture. All right, I see some questions. Let me actually be fair and start with the first question. So Dagwood D says, why are there no other adults on trail with him as well? Again, Dagwood D, you're a little late, which is fine. Go back to the beginning of the stream, which we discuss some of the accomplices who have already testified and have already pled guilty. All right, keep the truth. At Empowered Esquire TV, can you explain visual depictions, please? Why, yes. A visual depiction is something that you can look at and you can decipher or you can discern or you can see, right? That it is showing something relevant to the case. So a visual a visual depiction could be a picture. A visual depiction could be a video. A visual depiction could be a painting. It's just something that you look at, which you can discern something relevant to the case. Okay? Visual depiction. All right, rocking with the truth. Yes, he had to move all the young girls around because we know girls are catty. He had money to spend on hotels and stuff for other children, but not on his own children. I'm not sure about that, so I can't speak to that. And Sidbo says, don't forget to put Africa Bambaataa on the list. Oh boy, allegedly. That's another entire mess. So listen, everyone, we are rounding out our time together. If you have questions about this case, about where we're headed, about the Aaliyah accusations or the male victim, anything in the like, now's the time. The floor is open for your questions. All right. We got a question. Is it legal for someone to read the transcript or get inside information and share it in its entirety? So for those of you who are unaware, trials are public record unless for some very special reason they're deemed to be private. So trial transcripts are public record. Inside information, that depends on what kind of information it is as to whether or not it would be confidential. Can any of the parents be charged? Yes, there are many states, including Florida, that have laws on the books regarding parents who endanger their children, and some could interpret it to be endangerment of some sort if you bring your child around someone who is abusing them. But these laws are very rarely used because the government would have to prove that these parents knew for sure what they were handing their child over into. I mean, unequivocally for sure. And that's very difficult to prove. And also the government probably wants a lot of these parents to cooperate with their case, which it would be counterproductive for them to prosecute them. Jehovah Panther, hello. What demographic of people will most likely frequent fast food chains like McDonald's? Well, we know that answer. Listen, for anyone who takes conversations about socioeconomic status and demographic personal, please don't. You know, when we talk about these things, we're talking straight statistics, okay? And we know that statistically, fast food chains are frequented by people of certain cultural groups, right? We know that. We can be real about that. And it's tied to socioeconomic status. KW is wondering, what are the statute of limitations for Azriel? So KW, the statute of limitations would depend on which charge you're specifically referring to. But what I can assure you is that the statute of limitations for what R. Kelly is being charged with under the Mann Act and under the criminal enterprise and racketeering statutes has most certainly not passed. Okay, I see another question. Tasha K and today's news of how an employee of the prison leaked documents. Can this evidence still be admissible? Well, if these documents were leaked, as I said, if they were previously confidential, then more than likely they will have a hard time admitting them in court because they will have to disclose to the court where they obtained these confidential documents from. Now, if they can try to argue some sort of separation, right, some degrees of separation, perhaps argue that they had nothing to do with the release of it and it just somehow landed in their lap, then it's possible that a judge might allow it in. All right, I don't see any more questions. I see a comment from Miss Yvonne Diva, another content creator you also check out. She says, I just wonder why some of us get it, but so many don't. It's wrong to touch a child intimately, etc. It's wrong to engage in adult contact with a minor. Period. Trying to blame the minors is sick. That's right. That is right. And you would think that that would be an across the board consensus, right, Yvonne? But no, that's not where we are. Instead, we are at minors being blamed for things that allegedly happened to them. Okay, so I don't see any more questions. So we are going to go ahead and round up our discussion about this R. Kelly trial. I don't know if you all are hearing the ridiculous car alarm in the background again, but I think that might be a sign that we should just go ahead and head on out. So listen, it has been wonderful being here with you per usual. We've had this conversation about the Aaliyah accusations in the R. Kelly trial and the alleged male victim in the R. Kelly trial. And so per usual, you have witnessed another installment of Empowered Esquire TV. If you're catching this stream on the replay, tell me in the comments, what say you? Do you think that Jane Doe number 6 will still be viewed as a credible witness despite her saying that she does not characterize herself as a victim? And also, what do you think about John Doe? Do you think it hurts his credibility that he's facing a lot of jail time in exchange for his testimony? I'd like to hear from you. And so with that being said, here on Empowered Esquire TV, we like to empower you with legal knowledge. I hope that you feel powerful and amazing because you are. See you soon. If you're still tuned in, the broadcast is refusing to end. I don't know if this is a divine sign or what. This is very, very interesting. I am going to try one more time. Let's see.